Rain poured heavily, soaking the quiet street and beating down on the roof of a modest suburban house. The sky was dark, the air cold, and the wind bit through Janelle's thin hospital sweater. She stood on the front porch, shivering, her hospital bag slung over one shoulder and a small suitcase by her feet. One hand clutched her belly, though it no longer carried the life she had once dreamed of. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen from crying, and her body felt hollow. She had just come from the hospital, alone and broken, after losing the baby that had meant everything to her. She knocked softly at the door, hoping, praying for warmth, for comfort, for Marcus. The door creaked open a few inches. Marcus stood there, dressed in a sweatshirt and jeans, his arms crossed. He didn't look surprised to see her, only annoyed. His face was hard, unreadable. Janelle gave him a small, trembling smile, her lips barely moving. "I'm home," she whispered, almost as if she needed to convince herself it was true. But Marcus didn't move to let her in. His eyes drifted to her stomach, then back to her face. Cold and sharp, he muttered, "You lost our future." Her breath caught in her throat. "Marcus, please, I can't look at you," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. Her mouth opened slightly in shock. She had expected sadness, maybe even silence, but not this, not rejection, not blame. "I didn't want this to happen," she said, her voice cracking. "It wasn't my fault." He stepped back and shook his head slowly. "You ruined everything. I needed that child. We needed that child." Tears filled her eyes as she reached a hand toward him. "I needed you." But Marcus had already begun to close the door. "Marcus, please." The door shut with a final, unforgiving thud. She stood there, blinking through the rain, frozen in disbelief. Her legs gave out, and she dropped to her knees beside her suitcase. The rain soaked through her clothes, through her hair, through her skin. But she didn't move. She couldn't. In a single moment, everything she had depended on was gone. The man she loved had turned his back on her. She had lost her child, her home, her sense of safety. All that was left was silence, rain, and a deep, aching emptiness. Janelle sat on that porch as night fell, holding herself tightly, trying to feel whole again. But everything, her body, her heart, her world, felt broken. Janelle lay curled up on Tanya's old couch, her arms wrapped around a pillow, staring at the ceiling as the early morning light crept in through the curtains. The house smelled like hair products and lavender, Tanya's signature scent, but it didn't feel like home. Nothing felt like home anymore. She hadn't slept well in days. Her mind kept returning to the porch, to Marcus's face, to the sharp way he looked at her like she had become a stranger. She hadn't told Tanya the whole truth, only that the miscarriage had been hard, and she needed a place to stay for a while. She couldn't bring herself to say the words. "He kicked me out." Shame burned too deep. Her thoughts wandered back to her childhood. Her mother, Rosa, was often gone, working double shifts or drinking through the nights when things got too hard. Janelle had grown up fast, learning to cook and do her own laundry by the time she was 10. She used to sit by the window after school and wait, hoping her mother would come home sober and smiling. But most nights ended in silence, or loud slurred words and tears. That life had taught her one thing: if you wanted peace, you had to work for it. So she studied hard, pushed through nursing school while working part-time jobs, and built a life on her own terms. When she met Marcus, he was charming, ambitious, and attentive. He made her believe in happy endings. He had big dreams of starting his own tech company. They talked about travel, kids, and building a future together. She thought she had finally found someone who would never leave. But after Marcus's business failed, something in him changed. He became moody, distant. He stopped listening. He would criticize her for small things, the way she folded laundry, the way she cooked, even how she walked. At first, Janelle thought he was just stressed, that things would pass. Then the coldness turned into silent treatments, controlling rules, and sometimes words that cut deeper than any slap. Still, she stayed. She told herself love was hard, that marriage took work. And when she found out she was pregnant, she believed maybe, just maybe, this would be the turning point. Maybe the baby would bring them back together. But now, everything had shattered. Tanya's apartment was warm and filled with laughter most days. Tanya, with her bold red curls and loud laugh, had always been the opposite of Janelle, fearless and quick to speak her mind. They had been best friends since nursing school, though Tanya had taken a different path, becoming a hairstylist and running her own small salon. Tanya didn't ask too many questions, just hugged her tight and made space on the couch. Still, Janelle could feel the questions in her friend's eyes. The hardest part wasn't just losing the baby. It was losing her identity, her marriage, her sense of self. She looked in the mirror now and didn't recognize the woman staring back. She had cut off her mother years ago, after one too many broken promises and nights spent cleaning up after Rosa's drinking. Rosa had gotten sober since then, or so Janelle heard. But the wounds were deep, and she hadn't been ready to reopen that door. Not even now. Some mornings Janelle would sit on the edge of Tanya's bed after Tanya left for work, holding her phone and staring at Marcus's contact. She never dialed, but in her heart, she waited for a call, a message, an apology, something to prove that the man she married still existed. But the silence from him was loud and heavier than she could carry. Money was tight. She had taken some time off from the hospital but knew she couldn't afford to stay away much longer. She needed to work, to get her own place, to feel like she had control over something, anything. Her self-worth had taken a hard hit. Every day felt like walking through fog. She forced herself to get up, shower, eat something, but the grief hung over her like a storm cloud. She didn't tell anyone how afraid she was of being alone forever, or how a part of her still hoped Marcus would change his mind and come for her, that he'd remember the love they shared. But somewhere deep down, another part of her, a small, flickering light, whispered that maybe this was the start of something new, that maybe the future didn't have to look like the past. Not if she chose differently, not if she put herself first. She didn't feel strong yet, but she was still standing, still breathing, and maybe, for now, that was enough. Janelle sat in the hospital waiting room, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. It had been 2 weeks since everything fell apart, and this follow-up appointment felt like another step into pain. She hadn't wanted to come, but her doctor insisted. They needed to be sure her body was healing. She expected a clinical chat, some pills maybe, and then to go home and cry on Tanya's couch. But what happened next changed everything. The doctor entered with a strange look, not the soft, pitying one Janelle had grown used to, but something more surprised. "Janelle," she said gently, sitting down beside her. "I don't know how to explain this, but there's still a heartbeat." Janelle blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "There were twins," the doctor explained. "One didn't survive, but the other baby is still alive. Strong heartbeat. Everything looks healthy so far." Her heart stopped. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The world felt like it tipped sideways. She thought it had all ended, that everything she was carrying, physically, emotionally, was already gone. But now, there was life. Not one, but two. And one was still holding on. Tears filled her eyes. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Yes," the doctor nodded. "It's rare after trauma like yours, but it happens. You're still pregnant, with one healthy baby." The drive home felt like a blur. Her mind was racing. She kept her hand on her stomach, as if to protect what was left. A tiny flicker of hope lived there now, buried beneath layers of pain. She cried, for the baby she lost, for the one that survived, for the mother she would now become, whether she was ready or not. Back at Tanya's apartment, she didn't say anything at first, just sat on the couch, dazed. Tanya was doing laundry, humming to herself, until she noticed something was off. "What's wrong? Bad news?" Tanya asked, sitting beside her. Janelle looked at her with red eyes and shook her head slowly. "I'm still pregnant. One of the babies made it." Tanya gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Oh my God. Janelle, that's... wow. Are you okay? I mean, do you want this?" "I don't know," Janelle said honestly. "I'm scared. I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff, but it feels like I have a reason now. A reason to keep going." That night, Janelle lay awake, her hands on her belly. She thought about Marcus. Should she tell him? Should he know? But then she remembered his words, cold and heavy. "You lost our future." He didn't deserve this new hope. Not after the way he abandoned her. This time, she would choose herself first, and the child, no one else. The next day, she called the hospital and picked up extra shifts. The routine gave her focus. It distracted her from the grief and from thinking about Marcus. Tanya helped her find a tiny rental, just one room with a bathroom and a small kitchen. But it was hers, her name on the lease, her key, her new beginning. She also started therapy. It wasn't easy talking about the past, the pain, the fear, but each session helped her peel away the shame and understand she had survived more than most. That survival was its own kind of strength. Just as she began finding her footing, a gut punch arrived in the form of a social media post. A friend sent it without thinking, a picture of Marcus holding hands with another woman, smiling in a fancy restaurant. The caption read, Marcus and Joya, new beginnings. Joya. Janelle knew her, a co-worker from the hospital, someone she once shared lunch with in the break room. The betrayal sliced deep, not just because Marcus moved on, but because he did it so publicly, without a second thought, with someone so close to her world. Janelle sat in her small kitchen, shaking, the phone still in her hand. She wasn't crying this time. The pain was real, but something else had risen through it. Anger. Not the kind that lashes out, but the kind that draws a firm line. She looked down at her belly and whispered, "We don't need him. We never did." From that moment she knew. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was transformation. The days passed quickly but heavily, each one feeling like a battle. At work, Janelle fought to stay focused. Her shifts at the hospital were long and draining, and the nausea came in waves that didn't care if she was inserting an IV or comforting a patient. She kept ginger candies in her pocket, whispered prayers in the bathroom stalls, and avoided eye contact anytime someone asked if she was okay. No one at work knew she was still pregnant. She wanted to keep it that way, at least for now. It was her secret, her quiet strength. But the strain showed. One afternoon, she nearly fainted during rounds. Another time, she snapped at a patient's family member and immediately felt guilty. The pressure built inside her like steam in a sealed pot. She tried to keep a smile on her face, to move through the hospital halls like she had everything under control. But it was all an act. Then, out of nowhere, Rosa showed up. Janelle was walking back to her apartment when she saw her mother waiting on the steps. The same woman who used to forget birthdays, who used to drink until her words slurred and her hands shook. Rosa looked different now, sober, older, eyes filled with something close to regret. "Hi, baby," Rosa said quietly. Janelle froze. "What are you doing here?" "I heard from someone at the hospital. I wanted to see you, to help if you'll let me." But Janelle couldn't hold it in. Years of buried anger came pouring out. "Help? You don't get to show up now and play mother. You taught me how to swallow pain, how to pretend everything was okay even when it was falling apart. You think that made me strong? It made me broken." Rosa stood quietly, tears in her eyes. "I know. I was sick back then, but I've been trying to change. I just don't want you to go through this alone." Janelle turned and walked inside without another word. Later that night, she sat alone with a bowl of cold rice. The TV played in the background, but she wasn't watching. She scrolled through old photos on her phone, pictures of her and Marcus smiling at the beach, pictures of their first apartment. Then she opened her voice recorder. She wanted to tell him everything about the baby, about the hurt, about how she still missed him even when she hated him. "Marcus," she whispered into the recorder, "I'm still pregnant. It's a boy, maybe a girl. I don't know yet. You should know. I wanted to tell you, but I was scared. You said I lost our future, but I didn't. He's still here, or she is. I don't know what to do. I just..." Her voice cracked. "I loved you. I still do, and I don't know why." She saved the recording, then stared at it for a long time before deleting it. The next day, a letter arrived. Legal papers. Marcus had filed for divorce. The reason? Abandonment, mental instability. Janelle couldn't breathe as she read the words. It felt like he had reached into her chest and ripped out what was left of her heart. He had turned everything against her, made it seem like she was the one who broke the marriage, like she was dangerous. Panicking, she called Tanya. "I can't believe this," she said through sobs. "He's saying I abandoned him, that I'm unstable." Tanya was silent for a moment, then firm. "You need a lawyer, a good one. I don't have that kind of money. I know someone, young, hungry. She believes in women like you." That's how Janelle met Erica, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her early 30s, with thick glasses and a calm, confident voice. Erica listened carefully as Janelle explained everything: the miscarriage, the abuse, the baby she hadn't told Marcus about. "If he finds out about the baby," Erica warned, "he could try to fight for custody, but we're not going to let that happen. We'll file a response, and we'll fight this." It felt like hope, finally, but it came with fear too. The thought of Marcus knowing about the baby terrified her. What if he wanted to take the child from her, just to hurt her? In the middle of all this, her bond with Tanya began to crack. One night, as they sat on the balcony of Tanya's apartment drinking tea, Tanya turned to her. "You can't keep living like this, Janelle," she said. "Like you're still his wife. You're not. He moved on. You need to move on too." Janelle's shoulders stiffened. "It's not that easy. It never is. But you're holding on to something that's already gone. You've got a baby coming. You can't raise him or her like this, half in the past, half in denial. You don't understand, Janelle snapped. You've never been married. You've never lost a child. Tanya looked hurt. I've never had to be you, no, but I've been here, every day, helping, and it's starting to feel like you don't even want to help yourself. They didn't speak for 2 days after that. At work, things were worse. One afternoon, overwhelmed and exhausted, Janelle slipped into the supply closet and sat on the floor, sobbing silently into her scrubs. No one saw, no one knew. She just let it out. The grief, the fear, the anger, the loneliness. She wanted to be strong. She was trying, but life kept testing her, over and over. Still, beneath it all, the baby kicked, a tiny, gentle reminder that something, someone, was still growing inside her. And no matter how broken she felt, she wasn't done yet. It happened by chance, in the most ordinary of places, the pharmacy. Janelle stood in line holding her prenatal vitamins, her belly unmistakably round beneath her loose sweater. She wasn't expecting to see anyone she knew. She had stopped caring about hiding her bump in public. She was tired, and her back ached, and she just wanted to get home. But then she heard his voice behind her. Janelle? She turned slowly. Marcus stood there, holding a bottle of water, his eyes locked on her stomach. His mouth opened slightly, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Is that mine? He asked, voice sharp with disbelief. Janelle didn't flinch. She looked him straight in the eye for the first time in months. They both are. His eyebrows shot up. Twins, she said flatly. But they don't need you. Marcus looked like someone had slapped him. Why wouldn't you tell me? Because you slammed a door in my face when I was bleeding and broken. Because you told me I lost our future. I didn't lose anything. You did. He stood there stunned, searching for something to say. But Janelle didn't give him the chance. She walked past him, paid for her things, and left. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she felt powerful. For the first time, she hadn't tried to explain, or apologize, or beg. She had spoken her truth and walked away, but the encounter set off a storm. Days later, she was served new papers. Marcus had filed for paternal rights. He was trying to gain access to the children, even though they hadn't been born yet. Panic clawed at Janelle's chest. She couldn't let him back in just because he had suddenly decided he cared, not after everything. Erica, her lawyer, moved quickly. She filed a countersuit and began preparing for court. He has no case if we prove emotional neglect and instability, Erica said. And we will. Janelle didn't want to relive the trauma, but she knew it was necessary. The court needed to see the truth. Tanya agreed to testify, even though things between them had been tense. She told the court about the night Janelle came to her doorstep, bleeding and crying. She told them how Marcus had blamed her, how he never came looking for her, how he paraded a new woman around like Janelle never existed. The court listened, and they believed. In the end, the judge ruled that Marcus could not claim paternal rights without proving he could offer a stable, non-threatening environment. For now, Janelle would have sole custody, with all future rights to be decided after birth and further evaluations. It was a huge win. Janelle cried in relief when the ruling was read, but the most intense moment came after, in the waiting area outside the courtroom. She didn't expect Marcus to follow her out, but he did. His face looked different, not angry, not smug, just hollow. I'm not a monster, he said softly. You don't have to be a monster to destroy someone, she replied. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes red. I was scared. When we lost the first baby, something broke in me. I didn't know how to fix it. I felt like a failure. So you made me feel like one too. I didn't know what else to do. Janelle's voice trembled, but she didn't look away. You didn't try. That's what you did. You walked away. You blamed me. And now that the world knows, now that the court believes me, you're trying to act like the victim. I want to be their father. No, she said, standing tall. You want to feel better. There's a difference. He stared at her, his expression full of regret. Maybe I don't deserve another chance. You don't, she said simply. But they deserve peace, and I will protect that, even from you. Marcus nodded slowly, tears falling now. He didn't try to argue. He just stood there and watched as she walked away again. This time, not broken, not afraid, but strong. Done. Janelle stepped into the sunlight outside the courthouse. Her heart was pounding, but her shoulders were finally light. The worst had passed, and she had made it through. The court ruling brought a calm that Janelle hadn't felt in months. Full custody was hers. No shared parenting, no forced visits, no looming fear of what Marcus might do next. It felt like a deep breath after being underwater for too long. She used the little money she had saved, with Tanya's help, to move into a small but safe apartment in a quieter neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. She painted the walls a soft yellow, set up the nursery with hand-me-downs and gifts from Tanya, and prepared to welcome her babies on her own terms. She didn't feel completely ready, but for the first time, she felt capable. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, her heart began to settle. One afternoon, she stood in the nursery folding tiny onesies, and a memory of her mother came back. Not the shouting or the drinking, but the quiet hum Rosa used to sing when doing laundry. It came out of nowhere and stayed with her. That night, after a long time of thinking, Janelle picked up her phone and called her mother. Rosa cried when she heard her daughter's voice. They didn't talk about everything all at once, but it was a start. A few days later, Janelle visited her. Rosa's hands trembled as she held Janelle's stomach, her eyes full of regret and hope. They sat on the porch together, drinking tea in silence, then slowly began to talk, not just about the past, but about what came after. They didn't forgive everything in one day, but something broke open, a space where healing could grow. Janelle also found purpose again. She took a part-time job at a local women's shelter, helping other women who had gone through abuse, fear, and abandonment. She didn't tell her full story, but the women saw it in her eyes, that she understood, that she had lived through something similar. She sat with them, listened to them, helped them find their own paths to safety. Each day, her own pain felt lighter, not erased, but shared, transformed into something that made others feel seen. One morning, a letter arrived in her mailbox. She knew the handwriting right away, Marcus. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. It was short, an apology. He wrote about how much he had failed, how sorry he was for not being the man he should have been, and how he hoped someday their children would know he once loved them. He didn't ask for anything, just wrote that he was trying to become better for himself. Janelle read the letter once. Then she folded it and placed it in a box in her closet. She didn't write back, not because she was angry, but because she no longer needed anything from him. Not answers, not guilt, not peace. She had built her own. As her due date drew near, Janelle sat in the nursery one evening, the soft hum of her mother's old tune in the background, the glow of the setting sun washing over the crib. She smiled gently, hand resting on her belly. The road had been hard and full of pain, but she had walked it, and she had not walked it alone. Her babies were coming into a world where she would protect them, love them, and raise them with truth and strength. She had earned her peace, not by waiting for someone to give it to her, but by choosing herself, again and again. The night was quiet, with only the soft hum of rain tapping gently against the window. Janelle had just finished folding the last set of baby clothes when she felt the first sharp cramp. She paused, breathed deeply, and then smiled. It was time. There was no panic, no fear, just a steady calm that wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She called the hospital, grabbed her packed bag, and made her way out the door. Alone, but not lonely. She knew this moment was hers. Hours later, in the soft glow of the delivery room, her twin daughters entered the world, small, perfect, and full of life. Janelle held them against her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks, not from pain, not from sadness, but from something deeper, a release, a letting go, the weight she had carried for so long, the grief, the heartbreak, the fear. It finally began to lift. She looked at her daughters and whispered their names, Hope and Joy. Two names that meant everything to her. They weren't just names, they were promises. They were reminders of everything she had survived and everything still to come. Tiny fingers wrapped around hers, and in that simple grip, Janelle felt more strength than she ever had before. She cradled them close, pressing her lips gently to their foreheads. We're going to be okay, she whispered softly. Better than okay. The words weren't a wish, they were a truth. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but she knew she would walk through it with her head high, her heart open, and her daughters by her side. As the room settled and quieted, Janelle let the tears flow freely. They weren't bitter or broken, they were healing. She was no longer the woman standing on a porch in the rain, begging to be let in. She was the woman who built her own door, stepped through it, and found peace waiting on the other side. If this story touched your heart even a little, if you've ever felt abandoned, broken, or lost, but kept going anyway, then Janelle's journey is your story too. It's the story of every woman who was told she wasn't enough, yet still found strength in the silence. It's for every mother who held on through the storm, every friend who stood by, and every soul who dared to start again when everything fell apart. Janelle didn't just survive, she rose. She turned pain into purpose, loneliness into love, and heartbreak into hope. Her daughters, Hope and Joy, are more than names. They are symbols of what is born when a woman refuses to stay broken. If you're going through something hard right now, let this story remind you, you are not alone. Healing is slow, but it's real. And one day, just like Janelle, you'll look back and realize you didn't just make it, you thrived. So if this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of strength, resilience, and healing. Your support helps us bring more powerful voices to light. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, no matter what you're facing, better days are coming.